Kyojiro Rengoku, the Flame Pillar, burns bright in all our hearts despite his limited time within the story, but I feel his potential was wasted. And before I trigger any of you with that statement, let me first clarify. I love Rengoku and he's one of my favorite hashira within the Demon Slayer story, but his introduction into the story was far too soon and his matchup entirely unfavorable. When you're eating dinner, you don't start with dessert. You have your main course first, and eventually you get to dessert as the treat. In Demon Slayer, in terms of pillars, we start with our cake, we eat it, and from there we get to the main course. And the main course is great, don't get me wrong, but we also have some salad with a pillar like Iguru. Okay, enough with the food. I know you get my point. Rengoku's brilliance should have been kept until the end arc of the show. So it's been over a year since I read Demon Slayer. I was actually still in college finance lectures when I was reading it. And after completing the Mugen train arc, I had similar sentiments that I have now. Why would they make arguably the most likable hashira, the mentor to Tanjiro, and one of the strongest pillars have such limited story time and have a matchup against Upper Moon Akaza so early in the story? With Demon Slayer now airing weekly again, thank God, and these first episodes leading up following Rengoku's adventure to the train, they contain a lot of added scenes not in the manga, and it's essentially a director's cut, which I'm a huge fan of because it leads to even more character development of our boy and enables us as viewers to develop a closer attachment to Rengoku. But in turn, it's going to make his death this time around a lot more emotional than in the movie and in the manga. Nonetheless, 7 episodes which consist of this arc, and within the manga 15 chapters, this isn't enough time within the story that Rengoku deserves. He's one of the characters we find within manga and anime who's a protagonist, non-protagonist. That phrase I'm not even sure really even exists, but let me explain. A protagonist, non-protagonist is a character who demonstrates all the ideals and traits we'd find within a protagonist of the story, but lacks the plot armor to save them. Let's do a little checklist. Rengoku puts others before himself and wants to protect the weak. He has sick hair, he is overly loud and rambunctious, his silly personality can instantly change to serious when people he loves gets hurt. Due to Rengoku's lack of protagonist position within the story, he meets an ill fate and his life force burns up, pun intended, leaving a permanent scar on our hearts as viewers and readers. His personality is larger than life, spouting in an overly enthusiastic and loud disposition, and his belief that those born strong have a duty to protect the weak is perfectly fitting as a role as a mentor to our protagonist within Tanjiro. Not to mention his ridiculous strength, he's literally able to solo Upper Moon 3 within Akaza, who in Infinity Castle took both Giyu and Tanjiro to beat. Rengoku fought him by himself, and if not for Akaza retreating, Rengoku would have killed him. Rengoku's matchup in the story being one of the strongest hashira versus one of the strongest Upper Moons is a matchup I think could have been more impactful later on in the story. As we continue Demon Slayer, we see the fights with Pillar Tengen and Miss Pillar Tokito be Upper Moons who gradually scale in power as most fights do within anime, which is how linear progression and introduction to these demons I believe should have been. If there was a matchup that the author wanted to demonstrate the power of the Upper Moons to us as an audience to forebode later fights to come, regardless of my selfish bias in this, I'd much rather see Akaza face off versus Obani Uguru, the Snake Pillar. He's a quarter of the personality of Rengoku, and throughout the story serves a far lesser purpose. But I digress. In fact, I don't think if he died, any of us would even shed a tear. But I digress with my hatred towards the Snake Pillar. So within Rengoku's ideology of strong protecting the weak, he inevitably surrenders to the idea that because of this, his life can be taken at any point in time. We see this firsthand within the final words of his speech.
Don't feel bad that I'm going to die. As a hashira, it's natural I'd protect you all.
Rengoku was one of the greatest characters within Demon Slayer. His infectious energy, unwavering commitment to his ideals, and raw, well-tuned strength all make him a character we won't forget. Don't get me wrong, I get why the author chose to have Rengoku face off versus Akaza. It gave Tanjiro someone to eventually fight and get revenge upon, but it also gives build up to just how powerful these Upper Moons are. It sets the pace of the story and exemplifies to us as a reader that death is part of this show. People aren't going to be saved just because they're great characters with strong ideals. This world of Demon Slayer is brutal and cold, which are some of the reasons this show is so great. This isn't a video on Rengoku being a bad character, rather the opposite, and I wish we could have had more time with him as an important role within this grandiose story. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please don't forget to drop a subscription if you haven't already, and leave me any feedback in the comment section below. As always, be greedier, and I'll catch you all next time.